From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sonia Gray. The fifth hurricane for the 2018 season, Hurricane Beryl, it's making its way to the Caribbean. Currently, it's located over the central Atlantic at about 1,510 kilometers to the east of Barbados. Hurricane Beryl had recorded maximum sustained winds of 130 kilometers per hour. Based on current projections, the center is expected to pass to the north of Barbados late Sunday or very early Monday. The 2017 hurricane season was a particularly devastating one. The Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility says it paid $62 million to 10 member governments during the 2017 Atlantic hurricane season. Hurricanes Maria and Irma alone accounted for $55 million in claims. And disaster management is one of the topics up for discussion at the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting in Montego Bay in Jamaica that's currently wrapping up. Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Timothy Harris, tweeted that disaster management was among the issues which arose when the heads of the Eastern Caribbean bloc met with Chilean President Sebastián Piñera. Hurricane season 2017 was particularly active, and as you just heard, the cost to the region, Caribbean and Latin American, was very high. So what are the predictions for the 2018 hurricane season looking like? For that, I'm being joined live from Barbados by the Chief Meteorologist at the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology, Kathy Ann Caesar, to discuss that very same question. Ms. Caesar, thank you so much for joining us. So what path is Hurricane Beryl currently on, and is it posing any threat to Caribbean islands?
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. Currently, Hurricane Beryl is a very small hurricane at a Category 1 status. It is projected to move to the west-northwest on a path north of Barbados into the Leeward Islands. It is projected to weaken somewhat because of the current conditions, that being upper level shear, relatively cooler waters, and very dry air. So we do expect some weakening as it approaches the islands.
Now, Dominica is already on hurricane watch. Were they truly on the path again, or is this just a precaution given what happened last year?
As I said, the path is towards the Leeward Islands, which puts the islands such as Martinique, Dominica, and Guadeloupe within that range of the path. And so they still should be, again, rightly, because of what happened last year, put us an accent on the precautions and therefore put them under a warning.
Now, how does this hurricane season compare to last? Have there been any advancements in predicting the paths of hurricanes since last year?
Well, we've always been pretty good at predicting the paths of hurricanes and very fairly good at the number. What has always been a challenge is in change in intensity of the storm. This year, there has been a significant reduction in the projection for the possible number of storms. Right now, the current prediction from NOAA, as well as from the Colorado State, which usually puts out a seasonal forecast, is only projecting about between 10 and 14 storms, of which 6 to 7 could become hurricanes, and 1 or 2 will become major hurricanes. And this is because of relatively cooler waters, some of the coolest waters that we've seen for a number of years across the Atlantic.
Now, the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology focuses on prediction, research, and training. What did last year's hurricane season teach the institution?
What it taught us was, again, to be always vigilant. What we saw was a heightened activity because of warm sea surface temperatures, and we were looking at that particularly this year. Also looking at the trends in the El Nino situation, and that is in terms of the forecasting. In terms of resiliency, we're looking more at how we can assist the region in being more resilient, in being, one, ready for storms, as well as activities to help warn the public and all genres, looking at how the messaging goes out, for example, being more impact-based rather than scientific-based.
Thank you so much, Ms. Caesar, for chatting with us. We've been speaking to Kathy-Ann Caesar, actually. She's the head meteorology at the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the CARICOM conference is coming to an end, but there's another soon on the horizon. Trinidad and Tobago has agreed to host another CARICOM meeting this November with the specific purpose of discussing the CARICOM single market and economy. The CSME has been a major thorn in the side of Caribbean nations for decades. At the opening of the ceremony meeting on Wednesday, several Caribbean leaders said the time to stop talking and act is now. And Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness made Jamaica a signatory on 3 CARICOM agreements. They're part of the Implementation Agency for Crime and National Security and Law Enforcement in the region. A second related treaty was the CARICOM Arrest Warrant Treaty, and Holness also signed the country onto the revised agreement of CARICOM of the Caribbean Examinations Council, the CXC. The remains of the Ecuadorian couple kidnapped and killed at the border with Colombia have arrived in Quito. The bodies were received by their families and will later be taken to their hometowns of Santo Domingo. Investigations are still underway to determine what really happened. The remains of Katia and Oscar were found in a jungle area in the municipality of Tumaco, which is one of the most conflicted areas in Colombia. Our correspondent in Quito, Denise Herrera, has the details.
The remains of the young Ecuadorian couple murdered on the border arrived at the Mariscal Sucre airport in Ecuador. The plane, which carried their bodies from Colombia, was greeted with an arc of water as a tribute to Oscar and Katy. Their relatives and government authorities were there to receive them.
The crime was committed in Colombia. The bodies were found there, according to the Colombian authorities. So it's the Foreign Ministry's job to deal with it.
The relatives of the young couple expressed their pain at their loss, but they also say they still want answers from the government.
We are alone, and what's more, we're poor. The only help we've had has been from the journalists' relatives who supported us throughout. So we'll bury Katy and go on with the struggle.
The families of the team of journalists from El Comercio newspaper joined Oscar's and Katy's relatives. They say they will continue to struggle to ensure this doesn't happen again in the country.
We will carry in our hearts and souls this mourning for the loss of Paul, Javier, Efrain, Katy, and Oscar. At times like these, we have to pick ourselves up, keep going, and make our voices heard.
The relatives took the bodies in a procession across the city of Quito to Abbey Hill before they returned to their hometown of Santo Domingo for the burial. Denise Herrera, Telesur Quito, Ecuador.
And the government of Venezuela is opposing what it calls the Ecuadorian government's attempts at interference. The statement says they reject President Lenin Moreno's declaration against the sovereignty of Venezuela, referring to statements he made during a press conference with U.S. Vice President Mike Pence. The communiqué also says that Venezuela never questioned the elections in Ecuador and expects the same respect in return. The note was given by the Venezuelan Deputy Minister for Latin America, Alexandra Yanez, through the Charge d'Affaires of Ecuador, Elizabeth Mendez. Yanez says the former president, Rafael Correa, was a friend of the Venezuelan people and government whom they admired and respected. Time now for a short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. No more Latin American teams in the World Cup. Jose Daniel Lopez has all the action in our World Cup roundup.
Thank you, Soini, and welcome to our Telesur Russia 2018 special World Cup coverage. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez, and here are today's headlines. The quarterfinals started today. Latin America has unfortunately been eliminated from the World Cup Russia 2018. France beat Uruguay 2-0 and has qualified to semifinals. Real Madrid defender Rafael Varane scored a header in the first half to give France the lead. Antoine Griezmann scored in the second half after a powerful strike that goalkeeper Fernando Muslera couldn't control. Head coaches of both teams reacted after the game.
The boys really gave everything, but France were able to control the match very well. After the second goal, of course, there was a big distance between both teams. We couldn't control their strengths, and they played better than us. I admit that.
I have a younger team. They already played as a team before, but today's requirements were even higher because the opponents become increasingly good as you progress.
Uruguayan fans in Montevideo lamented their home team elimination.
We're a small country, but we're happy, and we gave it all in every moment. And I think this was reflected. Look, in this case we could all be crying, but we're happy. We came far and we're going to get even further.
There are 3.5 million inhabitants, and we are competing with bigger countries of 40 million inhabitants. For us, it is very difficult, and we overcame it all.
Belgium eliminated Brazil from the World Cup with a 2-1 result and advanced to the semi-finals. Fernandinho scored an own goal in the first half to give Belgium the lead. Belgian midfielder Kevin De Bruyne scored the second goal in the first half. Renato Augusto scored a header in the second half for Brazil. Football fans in Brussels celebrated the semi-finals qualification. Let it play. The World Cup is an occasion for fans from different nations to gather together and break stereotypes about each other. Russians are no exception.
Not friendly, some of the stereotypes of Russian people have not been so flattering. The World Cup in Russia is a chance for them to prove these stereotypes wrong. Latin American football fans are also learning to ignore these stereotypes.
I have talked to other Latin American people, and we agreed that the Russian stereotype portrayed in the US movies as bad and cold-blooded people is a complete lie. I have lived in Germany and the United States, and I have never met people as kind as Russian people. They are very generous and kind. They like taking care of visitors.
There is no better way to get to know people than walking in the streets and interacting with locals.
The truth is that I love the country. By watching movies, you have a certain impression of how the country is. But when you're here in person, everything is very different. The city, the people. It is true that in some circumstances, people are cold. I think you cannot trust what you watch in movies. When you come here, you need to open your mind. Stereotypes can be also applied to Mexico. And I think it has been good for Russians too, to host the World Cup. And so, they have to open their minds too. It's a reverse culture shock.
I love the city, the people. But talking to them is difficult because many don't speak English, so it is kind of difficult in these restaurants, in taxis. The good thing is that people are friendly. You can see they are trying to help you. They take their phones to translate. Previously, I had the view of Russian as cold people, close to the external world, but being here, you see how they are open and friendly.
The mainstream media has created negative stereotypes about Russia for decades, especially during the Soviet era. Now, thanks to the World Cup, Russia's show they are just as friendly and nice as any other people.
You have this stereotype that Russians are really cold, really serious, that they don't like foreigners, and it is not like that. Here Russians love Colombians. They are very nice and kind people, very peaceful. And so I really changed my mind. Russians are super joyful. I mean, maybe they are kind of cold because of the weather, but I think We rely on a few general impressions because of the TV, but the same goes about Latinos.
Football knows no frontiers. The World Cup is a unique occasion for different peoples to get to know each other.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said that his country's hosting of the World Cup will help break stereotypes about Russia. During a meeting at the Kremlin with FIFA President Gianni Infantino and former football stars, Putin said that most visiting football fans have a positive experience during the World Cup.
Tens of thousands of people came to Russia from various countries. Tens of thousands. It is them who are creating this wonderful festive atmosphere in Russia. I'm sure that an overwhelming majority of people who came will leave with the best feelings and memories of our country and will come again many times.
We all fell in love with Russia. All of us, everyone who has been here for a period of time now, has discovered a country that we didn't know.
Winning the World Cup trophy is a dream for every football player, but manufacturing the trophy is also an honorable profession for a company and its employees in Italy. The World Cup trophies made by the GDE Bertoni company are actually gold-plated replicas of the original gold trophy, which is owned by the International Federation of Football Association.
We always deliver the World Cup trophy 4 years in advance. We have already handed over the trophy made for the 2022 World Cup. It will be used in an international tour to promote the tournament. FIFA has to make advanced preparations for the 2022 World Cup, so we have already delivered the trophy this year. The production cycle for the trophy is about 3 months. We made the trophy but failed to see our favorite team win it. Such a feeling is hard to describe, but I'm sure that Italy will return to the World Cup. This is without doubt.
Tomorrow, the quarterfinals come to an end. Sweden will play against England in Samara, and hosting Russia will face Croatia in Sochi. And that's all for today's Telesur Russia 2018 headlines. Don't miss our exclusive show, De la Mano del 10, the World Cup according to Maradona, only on Telesur English. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Back to you, Soini.
Thank you, Jose Daniel, for that report. Now, in Bolivia, an international meeting of women union members has issued a warning about gender inequality in workplaces throughout Latin America.
Delegates from 5 countries participated in the seminar where they analyzed gender inequality in the labor sector.
Que analiza las desigualdades de género en el mundo del trabajo.
Recent studies state that in the construction sector, for example, women receive 20% less salary than men, and there are more disadvantages.
The other issue is inequality. At the moment of signing women's contracts, that doesn't allow them to be mothers. The private sector doesn't hire young, fertile women because of the maternity benefits they might receive.
After decades of struggle for women's rights, there isn't a lack of laws, but of mechanisms to enforce the laws and public policies.
There are lots of rules, but the problem is that they're not being respected. That's why, in this space, we try to motivate women and unions to strengthen, to protest, because our Constitution recognises rights and they must be enforced in women's daily lives through public policies.
It is in the political sector where these policies, which could solve gender inequality, should be laid out, but they are not.
Gender discrimination can be seen in the political sector. We don't have an active female representative. So the idea is not only to develop the economic and social areas, but also in the political sector, because this must be fixed in all areas for change to come.
According to the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, this affects almost 7.5% of women compared to the 6.6% of men. Also, 78% of women who work do it in low productivity sectors.
Lo hacen en sectores de baja productividad. Freddy Morales, Telesur, Bolivia.
We're going to take another short break, but join us again after this. Look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. China has accused the United States of starting the largest trade war in economic history. U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods worth $34 billion came into effect on Friday. China has retaliated by imposing a similar 25% tariff on 545 U.S. products, also worth $34 billion. These include agricultural products, vehicles, and aquatic products. China insisted it would never start a trade war, but it will protect its interests. And with U.S. sanctions on Iran due to come into effect by August, the Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif has been meeting the other signatories of the Iran nuclear accord in Vienna. Zarif and the foreign ministers of Britain, France, Germany, Russia and China and the European Union were trying to agree on an economic package to compensate for U.S. sanctions, but they failed to reach a deal. The United States says it will punish any country that continues to buy Iranian oil after November 4th. The former U.S. President Barack Obama met the new Spanish Prime Minister and new Colombian President at the Technological Innovation and Circular Economy Summit in Madrid, Spain. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez released pictures of himself with the former U.S. President, saying they share the same progressive vision on climate change, renewable energies, migration and gender equality. During his conference, which was closed to cameras, Obama warned of the risk of political leaders who promote division based on religion or race instead of seeking unity based on values and ideals. Iván Duque also had words of praise for President Obama.
We have just finished a very good meeting with President Obama, a pleasant and friendly meeting during which he first ratified his appreciation for Colombia. I explained to him our government agenda. I think he received the comments we made to him very well. We told him about our challenges in security and economic development. I insisted on the importance of the bipartisan support from the United States to Colombia, and I am very happy to see his willingness to continue to support that bipartisan support. So I think the meeting ended very well.
Staying in Spain, the San Fermin festival, more popularly known as the Running of the Bulls, kicked off in Pamplona. The Running of the Bulls starts each morning at 8 a.m. and takes place over a stretch of 800 meters from a corral to the city's bull ring, where runners are chased by a pack of 6 bulls. This year's festival has been somewhat overshadowed by a controversial court ruling in which 5 men who called themselves the Wolf Pack were cleared in April of raping an 18-year-old woman at the festival in 2016 and convicted of the lesser crime of sexual abuse. Well, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesiotv.net/English. And join us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesio English, I'm Sony Gray. Thank you so much for watching.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Moves. Weekdays, only on Telesur.